Welcome to the Wealth Stream Podcast. The team at Hightower Great Lakes share their insights and passions for empowering their clients to live their best life. In this energetic podcast, we will take you on a journey to help you navigate your financial future, overcome life's challenges to reach your financial goals, and find the financial clarity you've been searching for. Let's explore the downstream impact of your wealth and what it means to you, your family, and your community to live greater.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Stream with Tim Scannell from Hightower Great Lakes. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, Eric?
I'm surviving. You know, I think we've talked about this. We're still in the middle of kind of some self-quarantining going on, and
I know,
working from home and all that good stuff. And like I said, confession, I'm continually working on not being covered in cheese whiz and cracker crumbs because that's what I'm down to in my pantry. So I should probably go outside sometime.
At some point, yes.
Or open a window.
Get some air, please.
Yeah, just opening a window would probably help a lot.
It's cold, though. That's the problem here, so I'm trying.
Yeah. All right, so we are in the middle of lots of changes and things, but here's the thing, is that I know that you are my rock, Tim. You are my rock. You bring me good information every time we get on a podcast, and I'm excited to talk about today's topic because it's really for business owners from what I understand.
It is. Most of my clients are business owners, entrepreneurs, first, second generation. And as we go through our process for planning with them, one of the advanced planning topics we always focus on is advanced planning, or what they call wealth enhancement. And as part of wealth enhancement, we always want to look at the business because it's typically the largest asset, the driver for a family's financial independence, for achieving their goals, etc. So today I wanted to cover what I call value drivers, which are things that we can help clients with, help them focus on their business to make the value greater. They continue to do exactly what they're doing, working day to day in the business, but we try to help them step back, step out, look at the business, look at what drives the value, so that regardless of what their plans are for succession, whether it's internal with family or internal with key people or just selling at some point, we just want to make sure, help them get the greatest value. So I wanted to talk about value drivers today.
All right. Value drivers. What's our first one we're talking about?
First of all, when we talked with clients, one of the things we want to stress is why. Why do we even care about value drivers, and why focus now? Oftentimes, a client will come to us when they're maybe ready to retire, or somebody, prospect or lead comes to us from an attorney or a CPA who says, "Yeah, I have a client who's looking to sell," and I don't want to say that's too late. It's never too late, but you typically need multiple years, 3, 4, 5 years to really get things in order and make sure that your business looks and focuses on these value drivers and so gets the greatest benefit. So we actually have an ebook that we prepared that we can provide to anyone listening who wants more detail, because I'm going to cover 9 value drivers today. Generally, I can't really dive into them too deep with the limited time we have, but like I said, we have a great book that we can provide that has much more details. We have checklists and we have processes that we can help people go through if they have more interest, in the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've spoken many times, or we've spoken together about kind of what that foundation for a succession plan looks like. And you've been talking about it for quite some time, that 3 to 5 years, even 10 years out is really when you want to get started. But as you said, it's never completely too late. If you're trying to, be done tomorrow, well, that's probably not very good planning.
Exactly.
But other than that, you've really got some ideas, and I know that you're going to share the value drivers today, but I don't remember what number of podcasts they were, but early on in your podcasting career, Tim, you really talked about succession plans and what that looks like, and you dove deep into it. So I encourage anybody listening to go back and listen to some of those first podcasts that you did. For today, where do we start with the 9 drivers?
Today, one of my favorite questions, or one of the things I like to ask clients when I first start working with them, or when we have an advanced planning meeting, is, how does this fit into your objective? I really like how questions. So when I'm talking to a client about their business and their succession planning long term, the how gets into these value drivers. So number 1, we'll just dive right into it, is, and this is really the mother of all drivers, this is the key. next level management. You know, Eric, as I imagine you think about your practice, your firm, clients for years have asked me, you know, hey, if something happens to Tim gets hit by the proverbial truck, you know, what happens? And so that's one of the reasons why, as I've expanded my practice and as I work with other clients and talk about their business, is, you know, I have partners, I have resources, I have a next generation that I'm trying to work with to help the succession plan of our firm, for example. So I am dealing with millennials, who are awesome, by the way. Let me just say that right off the bat. But the next level management is one of the key drivers. So when I am talking to a client and we're looking at their business, we've talked a little bit about this in podcasts in the past. You know, the first step is really, let's evaluate your team. Let's look at, do you have a great chief financial officer, operations person? You know, how long have they been with you, and how long are they going to be with you going forward? So, for example, if you're thinking of selling internally, maybe you need to bring in a next level, next generation of management to help you. If you're thinking of selling externally to outside through a private equity firm or something like that, they're going to want to immediately know, okay, if you're gone as the owner, as the founder, as the patriarch, who's next in line, and are we going to have to worry about creating a succession plan? So if you want to get a better value, if you want to, exit for a higher price, you need to make the business successful without you. And that has to be a focus on the next level of management. And so that's we call it the mother of all drivers, because really the next level, this next generation of management team that's coming up, they're the ones who are also going to help you with the next 8, because obviously they're going to buy into it and be part of that. For example, we recently just hired Gina as our marketing person in our office, just as an example. And, one of the things we did specifically was we said, look, we need a long-term next generation marketing person, communications person who will be with us. And as we were revising or updating the job description, I got a lot of feedback from my partners about, well, what about doing this and doing that in addition? And I said, no, we really need to focus. We need to have this as our person who's communications marketing. She can't be worried about, answering phones or doing, meeting with clients or doing financial planning. We really need a focused, organized chart of next gen management people who can come in and take over down the road with our mentoring, with our training, et cetera.
Yeah, and man, Tim, when you say that, it really, I can see business owners cringing in a way, right? Because
for sure.
Wait a second.
The nonverbal's amazing.
Yeah, you can't. That's all they do. I mean, come on, I've got to be able to do something else. But you are spot on. But getting business owners to that point, as a coach, I've worked with business owners for many, many years, and it's really, really tough, because until you feel like you're the size where you can justify the expense of someone who's just going to stay in that lane, and that's all they do, which that is, in this day and age, that is a full-time job, right? If you're doing it effectively, if you're doing marketing effectively, that is the full-time job for somebody in a firm like yours. What about those businesses that don't feel like they're at that point yet, where if I bring somebody on, they've got to split their time. They got to do 20 hours in marketing. They got to do 20 hours of, DOFI, right? Director of First Impressions or whatever, be on the phones, be on, greeting clients, all that stuff. That can be tough.
Yeah, I think the key is they've gotten to the place where they're at because they've been hands-on, always involved, managing every process. In order to exit, you need to delegate. You need to figure out who can do some of the things. One of the most important things we talk about with clients is, let's create a do not do list. Everyone has a to-do list. I'm like, let's create a list of things you should not be doing, that somebody else should be doing.
That's perfect.
And let's work on that. And then the other key thing I'll just talk about is you need to engage consultants. You need to bring in people from the outside. You need professionals who do this all the time. And that's a big sell. That's a hard thing to convince people to do. But, one of the things, we've talked about it in previous podcasts. We have what we call the virtual family office, and it's designed to provide resources that we can tap into for clients and business owners as they need it. So we spend a lot of energy screening, profiling, interviewing, questioning different professionals. And one of the groups we have kind of in our virtual family office are some consultants. I have what we call a bench coach. This is a firm, two super successful ladies who really what they do is they come in and they help companies coach and prepare the bench of the next gen CEOs,
Nice.
CFOs, etc. And so they're not, I'm not smart enough to do it myself. I'm not big enough to staff that. But what I can do is I can continually screen, resource, and find the best out there, and then introduce them to my clients as that need occurs. So in the case of business owners, especially when it's next level management, you're trying to bring in this succession. I started working on mine personally in 2014. So, I'm 9 years into it, and it's a long-term process. I brought people in, different specialists in, and we need to org chart, job descriptions, compensation, benefits, incentives. These are all things you cannot possibly do on your own, and you need to bring in experts when you can. So this is why it's the mother of all drivers, because if you don't do this first value driver, if you don't start it, if you don't, work on it and commit to it, really some of these other ones we'll talk about will probably never occur.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a video I watched not too long ago. It was about a bridge that was being built, and this is back in the 1800s, and how involved it was, because it was a bridge over a river, and they had to create ways to get down to the bottom of the river to create that foundation. And the foundation had to be huge and wide and deep, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. The foundation that you're building, I don't want to compare it to a pyramid. I would rather compare it to the bridge that I'm talking about. But those foundations were so massive to hold up that bridge for the entire span to get from one place to another. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You want somebody to be able to transition out of a business. If you don't work on those foundations and make them very robust over that time, those 8 years that you've already spent, the 10 years that somebody else is going to spend, you just don't want that bridge to fail halfway through.
Yeah, I agree. And, the role of the leader, the role of the founder, the owner, it changes. They've grown the business. They've created what's there. It's amazing. They have to really then focus energy on attracting the best and the brightest, and then helping them focus, making sure that they're focusing on, what their jobs are, mentoring, leadership. So the role changes, the skill sets change. So part of it too is helping business owners maybe with, training, education, consultants, things that can, help them be better leaders, better mentors, and help these other people focus. So it's easy to say next level management is a value driver. Obviously, it's much harder to implement, and it takes a long time. So, the takeaway I would stress with this first one is, it's never too late to start, because it's going to take you a long time to do it. We're all going through a major stress test right now economically as a result of the coronavirus. This, as we're coming out of it, this is really where, it's a good opportunity for people to evaluate everything. And then I think this would be one of the value drivers everybody should think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
So Eric, before we move on, I just wanted to cover one more item about engaging consultants, and specifically kind of talk a little bit about this bench strength coaching program that I've used with other clients. We had a podcast recently where we talked about, I had a consultant, she's actually a facilitator. She talked about a piece of property that she had managed with her family that they owned for generations, to kind of figure out how to appease all the parties, split it up, who wanted it, who didn't. Well, her name is Susan Gallatley, and she's actually involved with another partner of hers, Dawn Rowley, and they have this great program called Bench Strength Coaching. And what they do is they come in and they'll evaluate your bench, who is next in line, who do you have, who are you mentoring, who you're training, this next generation of management, and then also kind of give you some guidelines for, okay, if you don't have the A team, if you don't have what you want, how do we go through the process of getting that?
Yeah, that's great.
They've also done a really great program. They call it Women Rising, where they're really trying to promote a lot of more women into the CEO positions. And they've got a series of trainings. They have, I should say, seminars and other things around the country. But I just wanted to throw that out because I'll be interviewing Susan in a podcast coming up, I think, next month. And so that's kind of a teaser for that one because I think the audience will really like that.
Oh, I'm gonna geek out on that so bad. Seriously, that's just thinking about how that works and the relational dynamic that happens when they go into a business to evaluate. I can see a lot of things going very, very positively. I can also, obviously, we as a coach and a consultant myself, when I go into an office, sometimes there's some concern from specific employees. I've had a couple employees that really didn't like me right off the bat because they thought I was there to fire them. Not my job. I'm not here to fire you, but if you're not doing a good job, that might be an end result, but that's not my decision, right? Yeah. But it's a great thing to be able to think about them going in and taking a look. I'm obviously, when you say bench, first thing I think of is baseball, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're looking at your players sitting there, and if you really help them to understand that this is going to make each one of them a stronger player on the team, man, what motivation, that I think I'm excited. I'm really excited. Like I said, I'm kind of geeking out about it already. So, I'll definitely be there for that podcast, just to let you know.
Yeah. And I joke, but I'm serious that, if I went back to school 35 years ago or whatever, I'd probably take more psychology and less accounting. Yes. But, because really that's what it is. And that's when I do my reading, we're going through these crazy market times. So I'm spending all my energy on that. But, before that, and once we get past this, a lot of the reading I do is really about that, the transition, the leadership, the mentoring, and the whole psychology behind it. Because that makes or breaks everything, the culture.
It really does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the next value driver?
So the next value driver is what we call operating systems. And it's really all about when a buyer comes in, when they're looking, just like your bank would. So when you talk to your banker or other whoever's financing, when they come in, they're looking at making sure that your sustainability of that your cash flow is sustainable, that there's processes in place that, whether that means, okay, we are formally doing budgets, which, a lot of companies do, a lot don't. We're formally documenting the procedures. We have a word like repeatable, scalable. Repeatable, scalable just means if you have the right people to evaluate it, or if you don't, we can bring in consultants to help you. We want to identify the things that you do for your clients, with your employees, for your people, that we could possibly maybe make them repeatable and scalable. Scalable just means, can this process be completed really without manual input all the time? And the analogy I try to use is, a hardware store. So you go into your local Ace Hardware, there's really not a lot of repeatable, scalable things, right? You need people. You need people walking around explaining and showing where things are. You go to your Ace Hardware. Whereas, if I have a number of clients who are CPAs getting into what they call virtual CFO business, virtual, chief financial officer, where, they can work from their house, they can invest in software, and they can leverage the software they're investing in, the technology, to work with multiple clients. And, each time you get a new client does not necessarily increase your cost. So that's really what scalable represents.
Got it.
So when a buyer comes in and they're looking at your systems, they're looking to see, okay, if you were gone, Mr. Founder, how would that affect the operations of the firm? If your family, a key family member, which often happens, is your CFO or your accounting manager, do you have processes in place? Are they documented? Is your software current? I talked to a contractor yesterday, and it's $20,000 to upgrade the software, and they haven't done it in several years, and there's no upgrades now, and so you're saving money by not upgrading today, but you're losing money on the back end when you go to sell.
Absolutely.
If you don't have scalable processes. So
yeah, absolutely.
We talk about operating systems that way.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of harkens back to is, and you've spoken about it on another podcast, is key man insurance, right? That kind of ties into this because you've got certain people that are key to your business, but if you're wise, in my opinion, you start cross-training, right, for certain things, to be able to cover for certain things. Now, there's certain things that people do within your business that you just can't duplicate. We understand that. But there's so many things that you can, and there's so many things, like you said, as far as software and as far as procedures and systems that can be upgraded, and people can be trained correctly on that, on a new system that will help keep that well-oiled machine running when somebody is down. And right now, we're not talking about necessarily hit by the bus, but COVID is kind of a bus, right?
It is, for sure.
For some of these businesses, some of them are still getting together. There's a small office or whatever, but if somebody has had some exposure, all of a sudden they're out for 21 days, hopefully you've got stuff in place like your team does where you can work virtually. But what if you don't, right? Who's covering that position? Who's filling in that gap for that amount of time? And that's my biggest concern right now for small businesses, is that they weren't prepared for this. They weren't prepared for either shutdown or being able to work remotely and having people that can cover all those things. So, and that's tough. And I can imagine that it's even tougher when somebody's looking at selling their business or transitioning it. If they don't have things in place, buyers are going to, they're going to take a lot off the top of that price because they have to build something from the ground up.
Yeah. And it's like one of the things it's kind of a signal for me when I'm looking at companies and talking to their operations people, and if they immediately mention they've got these elaborate Excel spreadsheets that they've mastered and prepared, my first thought is, well, something happens to you, who knows the formulas, right? Who can actually get into those things? Or I find with in the legal profession, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they still use Word Perfect, right? So Word Perfect was out in the 80s. It was a competitor to Word. A lot of people listening to this podcast probably never heard of it.
Yeah.
But apparently just documents and documents and documents were created in the legal profession on Word Perfect, and they just haven't decided to upgrade, or convert.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that, where you're like, okay, well, somebody has to take on this project, because if you're looking to exit or sell, a buyer's going to discount the price if they have to work with that headache.
Well, seriously, if you've got to get somebody to, bring somebody in to translate your chiseled, slabs of marble into working documents, then yeah, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a hang up.
Yeah, definitely. The third, I'll jump into the third one, the third value driver, and we call it just a diversified customer base. So,
okay.
Right now I think people are looking at, with the coronavirus, with this system shock, with this stress test, they're looking at their revenues and they're saying, okay, maybe I was a little too concentrated. I have a company that works probably a third of their revenue is in transportation for concerts, the hotel industry, entertainment, Ringling Brothers, the circus, things like that. So immediately when that industry shuts down, a third of your revenue goes away. Affecting a third of your employees, affecting a third of your equipment, a third of, probably more than a third, right? Diversified customer base is an important one. And, so one of the things we look at is when we ask about that, oftentimes people just aren't aware, how to even track that. A lot of great companies are, so I don't mean to say that. And the clients that I mentioned, they're right on top of it. But oftentimes they're not tracking and measuring it. That gets back to your team. Do you have the right team? Are you tracking and measuring the right things? Maybe the projects need to be created. Maybe we need to bring in your CPA, bring in your CPA firm. Just bring in consultants, technology people to maybe help that out. But diversified customer base is what a buyer will look at so that they can understand their risk. Just like your investment portfolio needs to be diversified, we want to make sure that your revenue sources are also, and that's something that you can't change immediately, but you have to think about long-term to get a better price when you're looking to exit down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my buddies and I were just talking about this. It was yesterday or the day before, that there are a lot of groups with Airbnb that they saw the trend. They saw what was happening with Airbnb, and they began to buy properties, right? So they have multiple properties, and they manage multiple properties, but they're all set aside for Airbnb. Well, from what I understand, Airbnb, if you have your place rented for a week to 2 weeks per month, it covers everything plus some income, right? Well, Airbnb's not doing real hot right now because nobody's traveling really. So those people that, like you said, that aren't diversified, that don't have other things in place, if they've got 20, 30, 50 properties that all of a sudden went from being rented 3 weeks a month to 2 days a month, that's a huge problem. So the diversification of clients and kind of where your incomes are coming in from, boy, that's a huge question right now, especially. And I could see that would be a huge concern for anybody looking to buy a business, because you don't want to be, this will be an incredible lesson for people to learn from this ordeal we're going through right now.
Exactly. And it could be, client concentration. You want to make sure that, one client in particular doesn't represent a, large percentage of your business.
Yes.
Geographic. Maybe other parts of the country will recover faster than New York, from the coronavirus instance. So, there's just there's a number of criteria for diversified customer base that a buyer will look at. And I think, again, going through this stress test right now, this is probably something that everybody just should be looking at as we prepare to exit at some point.
Yeah. Tim, I know that we have 9 drivers to cover, and we've done 3, but we're out of time already. So would you mind coming back for another podcast so we can do the remaining 6?
Yeah, that would be great, because I'd rather not just jump through it all quickly. Yeah. I really want to cover it. Again, for people who are listening, we have an ebook on this topic that's got a lot more information. We have all kinds of checklists and resources. But again, you're right. I don't want to jump through it too quickly. So I think that's a great idea, Eric. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And so where do we find that ebook? Because I haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we will put it on maybe a link on the podcast site, but you can also reach out to me anytime at tscannell@hightoweradvisors.com or on our website, www.htgreatlakes.com.
All right. Well, I have one advantage over all our listeners. I'm in contact with you right now. Tim, I'd like to get that email, please.
Okay. I definitely will.
Ebook. All right. Thank you so much, Tim. I look forward to our next meeting so we can get through those other 6. Man, this was fantastic today. You're speaking my language, Tim. I love it. Anyway, any closing thoughts before I sign off today?
Just that it takes a while. It can't be done quickly. We're all going through a incredibly stressful process right now with the coronavirus and the economic effect of that. This is the time you want to look at it so that we can get through this and grow the practice, grow the value as you're looking to exit down the road.
Yes, absolutely. And for those that are listening that are business owners, I can tell you this. Known Tim for quite a while. Worked with him on this podcast for many, many, many podcasts, and they've been fantastic. If you're considering selling your business or transitioning your business within the next 3, 5, 10 years even, you're going through something right now with the COVID-19, with the economy. It's tough. We understand that. As business owners, we both understand that very, very clearly. So not only do you have to be concerned about what you're going to do for the transition of your business, but you also have to now change gears to ramp up your business again once the mandatory shutdowns are over. Businesses are suffering. And if you're having a hard time right now, you need to reach out to Tim and his team, because they have strategies that can help you during this time, during the next 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years to get you back on track to be able to transition your business or sell it on your timeline for the best possible price that you can get by building a good solid foundation. And maybe some of the foundation's been chipped away because of COVID. Well, they've got a good repair team over at Hightower Great Lakes. So please consider reaching out to Tim. You won't regret it. And I'm going to also say this. Thank you so much for listening to the Wealth Stream Podcast with Tim Scannell. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Tim comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friend and family, and I'm going to encourage you to also share it with your colleagues. Thanks again for listening today. For everyone at Hightower Great Lakes, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Stream Podcast. We hope you gained some valuable insight that you can apply to your life and share with others. Please don't forget to subscribe below to be notified when new episodes become available. And don't forget to live greater. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Hightower Great Lakes. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Hightower Great Lakes is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Securities LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors LLC.